Welcome to The Explainer. We're about to dive into the story of a man born into slavery, a man who would go on to command an army, outsmart an emperor, and, believe it or not, completely reshape the map of the world. Okay, so picture this. It's the late 1700s. The French colony of Saint-Domingue, what we now call Haiti, was basically the powerhouse of the Atlantic. And I mean a powerhouse. It was pumping out an incredible 40% of all the sugar that Europe was consuming. And if you think that's wild, get this. It was also the source for a staggering 60% of the entire world's coffee. So this place was the richest colony on Earth. But all that unimaginable wealth, it was built on the backs of 500,000 enslaved people through one of the most brutal systems of slavery, well, ever. The sheer scale of it, the cruelty, it created this incredibly volatile situation. I mean, it was a total powder keg just waiting to explode. Okay, let's get into it. The richest colony on Earth. So, into this powder keg steps a man who was kind of uniquely prepared for the firestorm that was about to hit, François-Dominique Toussaint Louverture. Now, Toussaint's background was for an enslaved person on the island just remarkable. I mean, he was educated, he could read and write, he had access to a library, and actually devoured all these works by Enlightenment thinkers talking about liberty and human rights. What's more, he'd gained his freedom before the revolution, and for a little while even owned a small plantation with enslaved workers himself. So you see, he had this profound 360-degree view of the whole system, from the ideals of freedom to the brutal economics he would one day set out to destroy. So when the Night of Fire, the massive slave rebellion, finally erupts in 1791, Toussaint, who's 48 at the time, actually hesitates. He makes sure his family is safe first. But when he does join the fight, his calculated brilliance and his military discipline, they immediately make him stand out from all the chaos. He pretty quickly earns the name Louverture. It's French for the opening, because he had this uncanny ability to always find an opening in the enemy's lines. But here's the thing. His genius wasn't just on the battlefield. No, it was just as sharp when it came to politics and diplomacy. And this is where it gets really fascinating. You can see here how Toussaint basically played the great European empires against each other like a grandmaster playing chess. First, he allies with Spain to get training and weapons. But then, in 1794, when revolutionary France officially abolishes slavery, he flips sides immediately to fight for them. You see, his loyalty was never, ever to a flag. It was to one single, non-negotiable principle, the freedom of his people. And this chart really just drives home how effective he was. The British invaded, right? They wanted to seize this incredibly rich colony for themselves. Toussaint's forces fought them to a standstill. But his most powerful ally, his greatest weapon, it wasn't even a soldier. It was disease. Just look at these numbers. A staggering 60% of the British troops, that's 12,000 men, didn't die in combat. They died from yellow fever. It forced a complete and frankly humiliating withdrawal. So, with all the foreign armies kicked out, Louverture gets down to consolidating his power. He fights and wins a brutal civil war against rival factions, and he unifies the entire island of Hispaniola under his command. That means freeing the enslaved people on the Spanish side of the island too. Then, in 1801, he makes his boldest move yet. He actually dictates a constitution for the colony, and this thing was radical. I mean, it abolished slavery forever, for one, but it also made him governor general for life and said the colony would have its own special laws separate from France. It was basically a declaration of independence in everything but name. But governing brings a harsh new reality. He's got to fund his army, he's got to build a state. To do that, he needs to get the shattered economy back on its feet. His solution? The very controversial Cultivator System. So while the promise was slavery is forever abolished, the price was that the formerly enslaved people were now legally required to go back to the plantations. They were paid cultivators, sure, but under strict military oversight. It was this really difficult, coercive compromise between total freedom and the economic survival of the whole revolution. And you know what? His pragmatic and, coercive choice actually worked. By the year 1800, production was already back up to nearly half its pre-war peak. And that 50% recovery, that was the crucial revenue he needed to keep his army funded and make sure this new state would survive. But this move creates a new, very powerful enemy. Over in France, Napoleon Bonaparte is now in charge, and he sees Louverture's constitution not as a step toward nation building, but as a straight-up act of rebellion. He simply could not tolerate a formerly enslaved black man ruling France's most valuable colony. So in 1802, Napoleon puts together a massive expedition. We're talking the largest he had ever assembled, and sends it off, led by his own brother-in-law, Charles Leclerc. Now, the public story was that they were just restoring French authority, but the secret mission, the real plan, deceive and arrest Louverture, crush his army, and bring back slavery. The whole thing. After weeks of just brutal fighting, Louverture is tricked. He's lured into a meeting, he's arrested, and he's immediately thrown on a ship to France. There's no trial. He's just locked away in this freezing, remote fortress in the mountains, and a year later, he dies from pneumonia and mistreatment. Napoleon probably thought he'd won, but capturing Toussaint, it backfired spectacularly. It proved to every single person on that island that France's real goal was to bring back slavery. He became a martyr, and his famous last words really became a prophecy. "You have done no more than cut down the trunk of the tree of black liberty. It will spring back from the roots." The fight wasn't just for autonomy anymore. Now it was for total independence or death. So Toussaint's generals, now led by the absolutely fierce Jean-Jacques Dessalines, they unleash a final brutal war, a war of extermination. And once again, yellow fever just decimates the European army, killing General Leclerc himself. Finally, at the Battle of Vertières, the Haitian army delivers the final decisive blow to Napoleon's forces. And on January 1st, 1804, they declare the independent Republic of Haiti, the world's very first black republic, and the first nation anywhere founded by a successful slave revolt. Okay, but the story doesn't end there. The shockwaves from this incredible victory didn't just stop in the Caribbean. Nope, they traveled north and ended up fundamentally reshaping the future of the United States. So, how on earth did that happen? Well, Napoleon had this grand plan for a new world empire, and Saint-Domingue was supposed to be the economic heart of it all. The complete destruction of his army there just shattered that dream. So, humiliated and needing cash for his wars back in Europe, he decides to cut his losses in the Americas, and that leads him directly to selling the entire vast Louisiana Territory to a pretty shocked American government in 1803. And this creates one of history's most stunning and you could say tragic ironies. The single most successful slave revolution in world history, a fight for black freedom, ended up directly enabling the massive expansion of the world's most powerful slave state, the United States. So Toussaint Louverture is called the father of Haiti, right? He forged a nation through fire and sheer genius, leaving behind this really complex legacy of liberation mixed with authoritarian rule. But his impact stretched so far beyond Haiti's shores, which leaves us with a question that really echoes through history. In doubling the size of the United States, was this architect of black freedom also, completely unintentionally, an architect of America's rising empire?